In this lesson, we're going to translate math phrases into expressions. So in this slide, we're going to walk through and we're going to just separate the different words and put them underneath their corresponding operation. So first word I see is sum. Sum, I know, is another way of saying a plus sign. Divided by, hopefully the words give it away. That goes under the division sign. Plus, that's another word for the addition sign. Difference is another word for subtraction. Multiplied by is another one that's kind of given away in its wording, so it's multiplied by. Right out a little bit of space there. I'm actually going to put some lines in there so it's easier to see. Times is another word for multiplication. Increased by, when you think about increase, if you're going to increase your salary, you're going to add to your salary. So that goes underneath the plus sign. Less than, if we think about it, if our football team scored 5 points less than the opposing team, it means that we were 5 points subtracted. So that's another word for saying subtraction. So we're going to put less than there. Product is a fancy way of saying multiplication. Divided into, another one that's kind of given away in its name. Quotient is a fancy word for division. More than, if we scored 5 points more than the opposing team, that means we would add 5. Decreased by, if we think about that, if we're running in track and our time decreased by 4 seconds, it means it was subtracted. So here we have decreased by. Minus is also another word for subtraction. And then this last one here, this word quantity, is the only one you probably aren't familiar with. And that's actually associated with parentheses. And we'll talk about that when we see a couple of examples. But when you see quantity, and don't confuse it with quotient here, but quantity is describing parentheses added into the expression. So all we're going to do here is we're going to take a variety of math statements or verbal phrases, and we're going to translate them into a math expression. So if we read through this first one, we have a number k minus 10. And I know minus is a subtraction sign. So essentially what this is saying is k, a number k, minus 10. If I look at the next example here, it says the sum of a number m and 9. So sum, I know, is a plus sign. And then to figure out what's being added, we're going to look for that word and. So essentially this word and is telling you where your plus sign goes. That's what that sum and have together. And it's a number m and 9. So there's our sum of a number m and 9. The next one, we have a product, which I know is a fancy word for multiplication, of 3 and, again, this is telling us where the product or the multiplication goes. So the product of a number 3 and a number y. So here we have 3 times y, or you could just write 3y. It's ultimately up to you. Then lastly, this last one says a quotient, which hopefully you're thinking through. Quotient is division. A quotient of a number x and 12. That word and is telling you where that division sign goes. And this time order matters, so quotient is x divided by 12. You could also write that as a fraction as x over 12. Either is fine. So we're just using those keywords to figure out how to write our statement and looking for that word and when necessary. A couple of additional statements here. So it says 2 times, so I know that's going to be multiplication, so I have 2 times the quantity I know is parentheses, and if I see the word quantity, I'm going to start my parentheses, and it's the quantity of, that's saying what goes inside the parentheses, 3 minus a number w, and when the statement ends, unless we state otherwise that the quantity has ended, that's when you can close the parentheses. So we have 2 times the quantity of 3 minus a number w. If we look at the next example, we see the difference between 7 and a number 9. So difference is a fancy word for subtraction. We look for the and to figure out where that subtraction is going to go. So the difference between 7 and a number 9. The next one says a number n cubed minus a number m squared. So we have n cubed, minus is a subtraction sign, and m squared. Now remember, cubed is the third power, so we have n to the third power, minus m squared is a fancy way of saying second power. Then this last one says 2 more than a number w. So remember, more than means we're adding. And this one is a little bit different to think about because we're saying we have w and we have now 2 more than w. So what we're going to do is we're going to take w and we're going to have 2 more than w, which is w plus 2. And our final 4, these are the most difficult ones you're going to see. So this one says the difference of 3 times a number n and 5. So we can see 2 operations in here. We can see that they say the difference, so that's going to be our primary one. Difference means subtraction of this and that. So that and is telling you where your subtraction is. So your subtraction is occurring between 3 times a number r and 5. So the 5 goes on this side, and the 3 times a number r goes on this side. So that's where you really have to read, okay, the first operation was subtraction, so we're finding the difference between this and that. The next one says the quotient of 40 and a number c plus 4. So the division sign is going here. And what I suggest you do here is use the fraction because that's going to help you see it a little bit more. So quotient means division. We're finding the quotient of 40 and a number c plus 4. All right, this next one here says twice a number h. Now this one isn't as straightforward, but I want you to think about it for a second. Twice, if I told you that I was twice as old as you, hopefully you automatically think we're going to do 2 times something because that's how we get twice as many. So that's all this is saying here. We're taking 2 times a number h or 2h. And this last one here is the sum, so sum means plus sign, of a number b cubed and 3. So a number b cubed is b to the third power. Here's the 3, and we're putting the sum in between them. So again, it just comes down to breaking down what operation they're talking about and using the ands to figure out where that operation is going to go. So on this slide, we're going to work in reverse. We're going to actually write a verbal math statement for each algebraic expression. So what I notice here in this first one is that I have a big quotient. So I think the quotient is the most important piece because it's right in the middle of the 2 main items that I see. So I'm going to say the quotient of, and then I have to think about how to describe each piece. The quotient of the quantity, notice the parentheses, of 3 plus b, so that's the first piece, and, remember, and goes between the 2 things we're taking the quotient of, and y, or you could write and a number y. So that's the first one. We're looking at what's the main operation. We're saying the quotient of this and that. All right, the next one, notice how we have 2 pieces and the big operation is that they are being added. So here we could write the sum of 5 times y, and, remember that word and tells us what we're taking the sum of, 5 times y, and 10 times x. All right, next one, I notice the big operation is that subtraction sign right there. So here I have the difference. You could write maybe this minus that. It depends on how you want to write it. But I'm choosing the difference because that's another way to represent subtraction. The difference of m squared, or you could say m to the second power, and 10. And then finally, that last one, I notice here this is a big division sign there, so I'm going to use quotient again. And this says the quotient of 7 times x, that's my numerator, and, notice my and symbol going in there, 4. So it's pretty easy to translate, you just got to go slow. Notice what the main operation is and then break it up using that word and.